Part 3 of 3 tonight on Seahawks Forever, taking a look at the division opponents as we get close to training camp, now just 22 days away. If you're watching this the day it is released, Rob Stats Guerrera of the Gold Standard Network. You've seen him on the show before. He's very outspoken about his 49ers. He's very knowledgeable about them and the rest of the division and league. He'll have his thoughts on how he thinks the division is going to shake out, all the changes on defense for the 49ers, and whether or not that offense can hit the ground running again, even with some attrition at the wide receiver position. We're going to talk San Francisco 49ers. Training Camp Preview coming up next on Seahawks Forever.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
If you haven't checked out the rest of the series, my conversation with Jake Ellenbogen about the LA Rams and Walter Mitchell about the Arizona Cardinals, go back and check those out. I'll link those down below so you can catch up on those as well. In the meantime, subscribe to the channel if you would. Hit that thumbs up. Really helps push the video out to more potential viewers. If you're an audio fan and you listen on any of the platforms, if you'll follow or subscribe, it's different on some of the different platforms. That way you won't miss any episodes. And also, if you really like what I do, leave a rating or a review. That really helps as well. All the other ways you can support the channel, the Patreon, the Substack. I've started writing again. That's available and free until training camp starts. Those are all listed and linked down below. So I hope you enjoy this. My conversation with Rob Stats Guerrera about the 49ers. Rob's from the Gold Standard Network, has a history with ESPN, and really love the work that he does. So here you go. You'll be more familiar with the 49ers in about 35 minutes from now. Enjoy. Rob, it's good to see you again. What the viewers don't know is that before I hit record here, we just spent about 15 minutes solving all the Mariners' problems. So I wanted to mention that right off the top, just because if sometimes these opponent previews can get a little dicey, a little tricky when it comes to the viewing public, and you'll see some of that show up in the comments. Well, Rob is also a Mariner fan as much as he is a 49er fan, does a tremendous job covering the 49ers. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. And yeah, I don't know about solving the Mariners' problems because God knows there's a lot, but it's certainly not hard to identify them.
Well, let's try to identify what the offseason for the 49ers look like. And it was an interesting one, to say the least. More conversation this offseason, I think, about cash and cash flow and money issues and finances than there were about actual personnel moves. Of course, the big news, locking up Brock Purdy long-term to that big deal. A lot of continuity on offense, but tons of changes on defense. What's your view kind of looking back at the offseason overall?
Yeah, this was a offseason of change for the 49ers. This is, despite a lot of the names still being around, this is not the 49ers teams of 2022, 2023, like that. This is version 2.0 of the 49ers. 8 starters from last year are gone. So that's almost an entire side of the football that is gone. Almost 40% of their 90-man roster has 2 years of NFL experience or less. So that tells you the youth movement that this team has had this offseason. It's going to look very, very different, particularly on the defensive side of the ball.
And of those changes on defense, your biggest free agent signing this offseason, bringing Robert Saleh back to run that defense. I was shocked by that. First of all, because I thought he'd get another job. I thought he would get one of the head coaching jobs that were available. But even when he didn't, it's tough to go back. We don't see it very often. We don't see it work very often. This feels different. Kind of feels like it's going to be a 1-year layover for him, and then he'll be back in the hiring pool next year. But your thoughts on his return to San Francisco?
It was kind of surprising because, first of all, the 49ers sort of put all their eggs in that basket. They were waiting for Robert Saleh because what happened was he went to the Niners, they talked, and he said, look, if I don't get a head coaching job, I will be your defensive coordinator. I won't go anywhere else. I'm not going to interview. I'll return. But the Niners had to wait that out. And so they were sweating it out. And as that was happening, other defensive coaches were getting jobs elsewhere, right? Lou Anarumo, people were going left, right, and center, and the 49ers were just sort of waiting. And so I was very nervous saying, like, look, it'd be great to get Saleh back, but if you don't, hope is not a strategy. You need a backup plan, and all the best backup options were getting jobs. And I didn't want to get stuck with Nick Sorensen again, like they were last year. So it was a risk for sure. And I was certainly surprised that Robert Saleh was so willing to go back and work for Kyle Shanahan again, because they butted heads a lot. It was not uncommon for them to have shouting matches during the week. At one point, Kyle Shanahan went to John Lynch and accused Robert Saleh of insubordination. That is a thing that actually happened.
Wow.
So they butted heads a lot. But apparently it seems to be good now. And I think the fact that Saleh has that head coaching experience, it's changed the dynamic a little bit, because he understands Shanahan a little better. Shanahan doesn't have to get on him about certain things as much, because Saleh kind of understands where Kyle's coming from. So it actually is kind of smoother than ever.
And then tons of changes on the defensive roster. You talked about all the starters that departed, some really impactful ones on the defensive side of the ball. Dre Greenlaw, Hufanga come to mind. And then just deciding to go so heavy on the defensive line in the draft and to choose that route as opposed to free agency. They did end up adding Bryce Huff later in a trade. It feels like a slippery slope, because we see time and time again in the NFL how long it takes young defensive linemen to mature physically and to make that step up to the NFL. We see it all the time. These top 5, top 10 defensive tackles that are drafted high, guys like Christian Wilkins and Quinnen Williams. And it takes them a while. It takes till year 2 or 3 to hit sometimes. They go so heavy in the draft. Guys that I liked, they kept taking guys before Seattle did, because I was hoping for some interior defensive line help in this draft, and they just kept taking them before we had a chance to. Mykel Williams, CJ West, Alfred Collins, another guy that I really liked. Is it a risky plan to go with so much youth up front?
Absolutely it is, because what are the odds they're going to go 3 for 3, right? If they go 1 for 3, that's a great job, just in terms of the nature of the uncertainty of the draft. And they are not, this is not like we can ease in Mykel Williams and ease in CJ West. Like, no, they need those guys to be good. They need them to be good this year right away, because they don't have anyone else. So it is a massively risky plan. I agreed with it, because the guys they had just were awful. It was a turnstile up front. The 49ers got absolutely run over, particularly in the second half of the year last year. So it was a necessary change, but it's still a very risky change.
Yeah. Charvarius Ward, another defection there on the defensive side. One of the real playmakers there the last couple of years. I wonder if Saleh doesn't come back, do you think they take a more conservative approach to maybe stocking that side of the line, that maybe they're banking on his ability to coordinate a defense to give these guys a shot?
I do think that was a big part of it. And Jed York, the owner of the team during the draft, he just kept tweeting about, basically, he was essentially saying that Saleh was the one making all these picks. Like, oh, Robert Saleh's back in the building. They go with Mykel Williams. Basically, it was like, okay, Robert, you're here. We love you. What do you need to fix it? And they kind of, Bill Parcells had that famous line, if they're going to make you cook the meal, they should let you shop for the groceries. Well,
right.
Saleh's cooking the meal, and they absolutely gave him the credit card and let him shop for the groceries.
Yeah. Elsewhere on defense, I see a lot of young guys that can run around and make plays, guys that the Seahawks looked at in their draft years. I really like Malik Mustafa coming out. Cornerback Renardo Green entering his second year now. He's going to be counted on to start. And Demondre Lenore. How do you pronounce his first name?
Diamador.
Okay. Thank you. Lenore, fresh off the big contract last year. I was surprised they didn't go corner in the draft, and then expected him to maybe be in on the Jair Alexander situation. Do you think they're still looking to add there? There's still some decent names out on the free agent market.
Well, they did take Upton Stout in the 3rd round. He is a corner.
Oh, that's right. Western Kentucky, the kid. I liked him at the Senior
No, he's only 5'8", so maybe you're not counting him as a corner because he's so small. But no,
he's played some safety. Yeah.
I'm actually really interested to see how he looks. Supposedly he's looked pretty good so far, but they absolutely could use another corner, because right now their plan is Diamador Lenore on one side, Renardo Green on the other, and then hopefully Upton Stout. But if he doesn't work out, then they'll probably move Lenore to the inside at slot where he played last year. And then they have Trey Brown on the outside, which gulp. I don't love that. So I absolutely would love them to get another corner. They need at least one more safety. I've been begging them to go get Julian Blackmon, who's just sitting out there as a free agent right now.
Yeah.
But they need help in the secondary for sure.
I'm glad you mentioned Trey Brown. The reason I didn't see him off the top of my head here, I'm looking at a depth chart, and they had Lenore playing outside corner, and they had Brown at the slot, which he's never played before. So that would be a little bit of a slippery slope. Trey Brown's an interesting dude. Like he was nicked up a lot. Like we never really got to see a long period of time where he was healthy. We saw him make plays. He certainly can have impact on games. There was a game at Detroit 2 years ago that he almost single-handedly made a bunch of plays on the ball, had a pick six in the second half that essentially won that football game. He's an interesting cat. Like I can see him making plays and being a pain in the neck, but you're going to have to live with the bad plays too.
And that's the problem with the 49ers is they've had a lot of those guys, I feel like, where it's like, hey, in flashes, they could look good, but in crunch time, you knew exactly where the other team was going to go. You could predict it from a mile away, and it would just happen again and again and again. It did for the Niners last year. Anytime it was a third down situation, the other team would just bunch three wide receivers on one side of the field, and somebody would be wide ass open every time. And it was just like infuriating. But we've seen a lot of that, unfortunately, in the last year, especially.
Now, on the other side of the ball, a lot more continuity, although there are some question marks. Of course, Deebo Samuel traded. Brandon Ayuk, not sure about his status. What's the latest you're hearing about him and whether he might be ready to go week one?
There's no way he's going to be ready to go week one. I think, honestly, realistically, halfway through the season is probably when you're going to see him at the very... To me, the most optimistic return date is starting the year on PUP and missing the first 4 weeks, and then maybe he can come back then. But I don't think you're going to get any real meaningful contribution from Brandon Ayuk until around halfway through the year. He tore the ACL in his knee. He tore the MCL in his knee. He had cartilage damage. It was a grisly injury for him. It's not just an ACL. So I think it's going to be a minute. And their wide receiving core is going to be put to the test, especially early in the year.
Yeah, Ricky Pearsall now entering his second year. Your feelings on him and some of the progress you saw him make once he got healthy last year. And then I think it was a really cool, sneaky, kind of under the radar move to pick up DeMarcus Robinson, former Ram. Like he kind of reminds me, there's a couple of guys in the league like this. Josh Reynolds is another one where they never seem to be able to find a long-term home, but everywhere they go, they just find a way to be productive.
Yeah, I think that's just a solid veteran signing. But as I mentioned, early in the year, he might not be there because there's a suspension that's coming down from the NFL from a DUI that we don't know when that's going to come down, but I believe that's a 3-week suspension minimum. So, and the Rams even talked about it when they let him go. They were like, yeah, we know he's going to miss time. So it's not like, everybody knew what was happening, but right. It's very possible he's not there to start the year. It's Ayuk is not going to be there to start the year. So now you're looking at your two starting receivers. If you're the Niners, are Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings. And I'm super excited about Pearsall. I really liked what I saw from him last year once he had time to get in, because he missed almost all the preseason last year before the shooting. A lot of people don't realize that. He had some shoulder issues and hamstring issues, so he missed basically the entire preseason with the Niners last year. So I'm looking forward to him getting into camp this year. He's already been working out with Brock Purdy in the offseason. He's a first-round pick, and you need your first-round picks to be significant contributors. And with the injuries to the receiver core, the situation there, they need him to step up and be that guy again right away this year because there's nobody else.
And then this happens every year in training camp. You always you see both ends of the spectrum. You hear that, everyone's in the best shape of their life, right? But sometimes you see stuff like this too. Somebody will play a clip from an OTA, someone running through a drill. He doesn't look as quick. He doesn't look healthy. He doesn't look like he has the burst he used to. And I saw some of that in regards to Christian McCaffrey this offseason. Are you buying that, or is he an ageless guy? I was shocked to see when I looked up his age the other day that he's younger, much younger than I expected him to be, because it seems like he's been in the league for 20 years. Maybe just because he's been that productive. Your thoughts on Christian McCaffrey and if he's going to be good to go 100% this year?
He claims he is. The team claims he is. I know that there were some Niners content creators that said, he looks slow to me. Everybody at camp, the beat writers that are actually in person that are there say he looks like the Christian McCaffrey of old. So Right now, it seems like he's okay. But remember, he had bilateral Achilles tendonitis last year. That's the kind of thing that can flare up, at any time. It's not, you can feel good, but then all of a sudden you don't feel good. And that's it's both legs, which is very scary. He's missed a lot of time. He only played 3 games in 2020. He played 7 games in 2021. Now, in 2022, he was healthy. He played everything. In 2023, he was healthy. He played everything. But now last year, again, only 4 games. So he's got a lot of touches under his belt. If I'm a Niner fan, of course you want him out there as much as possible, but I just don't think you can count on a full season from him. I think you're going to have to depend more on your backup running back and even maybe your third string running back.
Let's talk about the offensive line as the unit is constructed. It's been productive. It's been solid, but I keep hearing, like, I see a lot of fan sentiment from the 49ers fan base. The last 2 drafts, I think there's a little bit of frustration, unless I'm reading it wrong, that they haven't addressed that position more for the future. They obviously hit on Dominic Pooney last year in the 3rd round. He looks like a really solid starter. But Trent Williams, getting up there in age, even though he says he's going to play till he's 40. Colton McKivitz seems to be a little polarizing. Not everybody is convinced that he's the guy there. Are you surprised that they didn't address the offensive line more? And what do you expect out of that unit?
There is no bigger divide in NFL fandom right now than how the 49ers feel about the offensive line and how 49ers fans feel about the offensive line. The 49ers are way higher on the line than fans are. They think it's going to be fine. They think it's good enough, especially with Trent there. They had the 4th most yards on offense last year of anybody in the NFL. Even with all the injuries, they still were a top 5 offense in terms of yardage. So the 49ers themselves are going to say, our line is good enough. 49ers fans are incredibly frustrated because they didn't address the tackle situation, knowing that any year could be Trent Williams last year. We don't know. Aaron Banks is a starter they lost, which most Niner fans were happy about that. Right. But they didn't really, they're replacing him internally with Ben Barch, who's just, kind of a journeyman guy who's never been able to stay healthy himself. At center, Jake Brendel last year was the target of criticism from 49er fans. Yep. And the 49ers offensive line coach, Chris Forster, came out this offseason and said he had the best year of any 49ers center under Kyle Shanahan. And all the fans were screaming because he was the most hated lineman last year. So there is a huge disconnect there. But honestly, I don't think the line is as bad as most fans think. Is it great? Of course not. No, it is not great. And in straight drop back, predictable pass situations, they're going to have their issues like they always do. But it's not as bad as they say. Other than the Eagles, I don't know how many teams have a great offensive line around the entire NFL. Mm-hmm. So I think it's better than it's average.
Okay. And I think it only needs to be for Kyle Shanahan and that offense to operate. You got the quarterback locked up now. A lot of discussion, a lot of differing opinions on value and how much a player like that is worth. How'd you feel about the deal?
I love the deal. And I have to say, so first you can't pay Brock Purdy. And then I kind of got turned around a little bit because I realized that these contracts are not as restrictive maybe as I thought. You can get out of it, right? The Broncos got out of the Russell Wilson contract. The Eagles got out of the Carson Wentz contract. You can do it if you need to. Mm-hmm. And then when I saw the actual numbers of the contract to be where Brock is, when you look at other quarterbacks around the league, I think it was a fantastic deal for the 49ers. I think if they can stay healthy around him, he's going to produce very close to what he did in 2023. I have no issue with the contract whatsoever by the 49ers. And they even got it done earlier than I thought they were going to get it done, which is a minor miracle. So I was on board with it 100%.
And they went out and covered themselves by taking another 7th-round quarterback. It worked for them once. If something doesn't work out with Brock Purdy, they got another one, right, in Curtis Rourke in the 7th round. Just keep going back to that well.
Maple Missile, baby.
I'm fascinated by the matchup week 1, Seahawks hosting the 49ers, because it's strength against weakness and vice versa, right? This 49er offense that should hit the ground running to start the season because of all the chemistry and familiarity. Meanwhile, lots of changes and a learning curve expected on defense. Consequently, in Seattle, just the opposite, right? A defense that returns all 11 starters, 15 players who started games last year, a defense that finished the second half of the season top 5 in every major category, but an offense that was remodeled in the offseason and underwent significant changes at some of the most important positions, quarterback, receiver, some more changes to the offensive line, and an entirely new coaching staff. So you have the inexperienced Seahawks offense going against the inexperienced 49er defense, and then the exact opposite of that, 49er offense. How do you see, let's just start there in a vacuum. How do you like that week 1 matchup?
I hate division games in week 1. Week 1 is the weirdest week of the season.
Oh, it always is.
Yeah, nobody knows anything about any of their, you don't even know your own team, let alone everybody else. So I did not like that. But what kind of made me feel a little better about things is Robert Saleh is here with the 49ers, and Clint Kubiak is calling plays for the Seahawks. The Niners are infinitely familiar with what Clint Kubiak is going to want to do on offense. So that might give the 49ers a little bit of help, combined with the fact that, as you said, there have been so many changes on offense for Seattle. So that made me at least feel maybe a little better. But as we talked about, this Niners defense is going to be full of young guys that are going to be literally, in this case, playing their first ever game in the NFL. So at this point, anything could happen week 1, and I would not be surprised.
I think it's one of the more intriguing storylines of this season in the NFC West is all the shared DNA on offense, with all 4 play callers in the division all having either worked together at some point in their career or being exposed to the same umbrella. And they all just kind of run a different version of the same scheme that they all learned together at some point, that they all cross over. And then watching the defensive guys in the league, right? Chris Shula and Robert Saleh, and then Jonathan Gannon, Mike McDonald, having like the chess matches between all 4 of the teams in the division this year, knowing how familiar they all are with that offensive scheme, I think is going to be fascinating.
Well, that was sort of one of the comforting things about like a guy like Deebo Samuel, right? Like, because there's so much overlap, because you know your divisional opponents so well, there are a lot of times where you get the ball to Deebo and it's not about scheme. It's not about knowing the other coach. He breaks 3 tackles and runs 70 yards, and sometimes that's the difference when everybody has so much familiarity. Obviously now he's gone and the 49ers still have guys that can make plays, but sometimes that makes the difference because everybody knows everybody so well that you just need somebody to just flat out make a football play. And we'll see who that's going to be on all sides for this division. But the NFC West, I think, is going to be incredibly important this year. The 49ers have 3 of their first 5 games, I believe, are divisional games, and they've talked about it relentlessly last year. The reason they didn't go to the playoffs is because they only won 1 game in the division. Watching Geno Smith run into that damn end zone in that game last year with, 12 seconds left, it still haunts me, man. Those divisional games, they were all close, at least for the 49ers. I can't speak to all of Seattle's divisional games, but all the games that the Niners were in the NFC West were 1-score games, except for the last week of the year. And I think it's going to be like that again for this year and probably for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, to your point, we'll find out a lot about the division early on. You play all 3 division opponents in those first 5 weeks, as you mentioned, sandwiched around a couple of favorable games. I think you get the Saints in week 2 and then Jaguars in week 4. How do you see the division shaking out?
Honestly, it would not shock me if anybody won the division. I know people are super high on the Rams. It's really funny to me that people are like, Brock Purdy had a terrible year last year. And then people are like, hey, the Rams are really good. It's like, well, wait a minute. Brock Purdy had more touchdowns than Matthew Stafford last year. And yet we're crapping all over Brock Purdy and we're saying, whoa, look out for the Rams. And I get it. Rams defense is young and very, very good. But I don't think there's that much separation between everybody in the NFC West. And I really do think the team that finishes with the best division record will be the team that wins the division.
I'm going to hold you to that, right? We're going to bookmark this and say that, come back to it. I do think there's going to be a lot of, beating each other up. In fact, in my preseason prediction after the schedule came out and I went and did the week by week prediction, I just kind of set it as a parameter. What's that?
No, I didn't say anything. Go ahead.
Oh, I just right off the top, I decided that I was going to have everybody split in the division just before I figured out the rest of it. I was like, I think that's the safest way to try to predict how this thing's going to go. And the fact that they all benefit from just the way the rotation worked this year, playing the AFC South and NFC South. So they're all going to they're going to face all these young quarterbacks. They're going to face all these teams that are rebuilding. And I do think it lends itself to parity. I think there's a really good chance that at the end of the year, everyone is kind of somewhere between 12 and 9 wins. All 4 of them. We could see all 3 playoff teams coming out of this division. I believe that.
I was looking at it, and because I think the NFC West is one of the best coached divisions in the NFL. And you look at all 4 teams. Now, the AFC West has 3 out of 4 coaches with Super Bowl rings, and the one that doesn't have it is Jim Harbaugh, who's gone to a Super Bowl.
Right.
So that's probably the best.
Okay.
If you look at Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay and Jonathan Gannon and Mike McDonald, that is a really well-coached division. That's what I was telling people last year. Like when the Niners were kicking the tar out of the division, I think they went like 11-1 against the NFC West or something like that at one point. They were taking advantage of some crap coaches. That's not the case anymore. There are no poorly coached teams in the NFC West. And that's why I think these are going to be battles. I think all the NFC West games are going to be fun. That's why I'm looking forward to the Niners playing it early in the year, but I'm going to be laser focused on the NFC West this year because I really do think that it's just going to be knockdown dragouts every single week.
Sounds like something someone should do a podcast about.
Good point.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Stay tuned, folks. I think the most fascinating thing about this schedule when it comes to our 2 teams is I don't think I've ever seen this before, actually. I'm sure it's happened and I could look back and find it. But to open and close with each other, to start the season in Seattle week 1 against each other, and then finish week 18, I don't think there's any question in my mind that week 18 matchup at Levi's Stadium is going to be significant and is going to carry a lot of meaning for both these teams.
I'm just saying the last time I saw the Niners play the Seahawks the final week of the season, it ended up being a pretty good game. If I remember correctly.
It's a Jacob Hollister game.
I think you mean the Dre Greenlaw game.
Where he got stopped on the 1 yard line. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, he won that.
But that was
so close.
It's crazy. But yeah, I think that is going to be a meaningful game. I don't think it's going to be one, what was it a couple of years ago where the Niners and Rams played each other and it was Sam Darnold against Carson Wentz because neither team had anything to play for. It was like that. That is not going to be the case this year. I think the Seahawks will be in it. The Niners will certainly be, I think, fighting for their lives at that point. And I'm just glad that game is in San Francisco because I do not want to go up to Seattle again in the final week of the season. No way, no how.
Yeah. Interesting that Darnold was in San Francisco for a year, obviously with Clint Kubiak. What are your recollections from just some of the things that were said about Sam during that year, how he went about his business and how people kind of thought that he handled himself behind the scenes there?
Well, behind the scenes, I didn't hear a single bad thing about him. Everything I've heard about Sam Darnold is he's a great guy, great teammate. No questions or concerns about that at all in terms of in the locker room and all that stuff. But I want to be completely transparent. There is no bigger person that has been bashing Sam Darnold than me. I did not want them to sign him. I was totally against it. And I don't know why people think he had some sort of renaissance in San Francisco. He did not. He was exactly the same player that he's always been when he was with the 49ers. Now, Minnesota's a different thing. I'm saying when he was in San Francisco, he was the same guy that could make some gorgeous throws and then make the most boneheaded turnovers you ever saw in your life. There was no rehab. I don't know why people thought that. He only had one start. There wasn't even an opportunity for him to rehab anything. So I just want to be transparent about that. I've never been on the Sam Darnold train. But behind the scenes, A+, no notes. Everything seemed great.
No. Well, I was hoping you'd say that Kyle Shanahan sprinkled a little fairy dust on him, and that's and that's what happened. And it was really going to blossom 2 years later, right? That's what we're hoping for here in Seattle. Hey, always appreciate your time, Rob Guerrera of the Gold Standard Network, and do a great job covering the 49ers, and I always appreciate your perspective on everything.
Anytime, Dan. Appreciate it.
And we'll have to talk some more Mariners, and maybe have some longer discussions about the NFC West later on.
Yeah, I would look forward to both of those things. One will make me a lot happier than the other, but let's do it.
Right. All right, buddy. Talk to you later. Trying to mix in some new closing music. Hope you enjoy. Just an update. I'll be headed back to Seattle in a couple of weeks, and I will be at training camp, credentialed with access for the first few days of practice. And then at that point, I'll be sitting down with the powers that be in the media department there with the Seahawks, and hopefully being given credentials for the entire season. So you have that to look forward to, the opening of training camp. I will be able to present things to you from a little different perspective. All the more reason to sign up for one of the tiers over on Patreon, as there will be exclusive content there available only to members. Also, the Substack, where I'll be doing some writing in addition to what I do here. Check out the merch store, too. Added a couple of new pieces this week. Having a lot of fun with that. Follow me on Twitter, at Seahawks Forever. Thanks for watching, you guys. Really appreciate the support. Until tomorrow, I'm Dan. Forever and always, go Hawks.